make it kill a light, hit the light for that blackout, blackout, hit the light for that blackout, blackout. Black bird, black moon, black sky, black light, black everything, black, black heart, black keys, black diamonds, blacked out, black everything, black, black, everything, everything, all black, everything, everything, all black, everything, everything, all black, everything, everything, black.
Sawadee Karp, hello and welcome to Victor Black's Masterclass. In today's video, we're going to be addressing the question, so what is Masterclass? And who's it for? And how is it different from, say, something like online coaching? So let's get started with today's video. Let me start by explaining that the Masterclass really isn't for absolute total beginners. I understand there's a big audience out there, and I actually produce content and materials for the beginner audience, the total beginner audience. But I try to keep that separate from Masterclass. It's content. I have about 8 hours of content that I provide completely free of charge. You just need to go onto the website and request a DVD, and I'll send the DVD out to you. It's basically what I would call enough information so that someone that knows absolutely nothing about this, 8 hours later, they go, okay, so I have a generalized grasp of, what's going on here in terms of enhancement practices, where to begin the process, where to begin my journey of self-guided education and discovery and due diligence. All right, so I try to keep the masterclass separated from the beginner audience. So what I ask guys to do is, if you have zero experience in this space, like nothing, you're going, I don't even know where to start. That's great. So get yourself a free copy of the DVD, watch those 8 hours of free content, and then at the end of that process, you'll be in a position to basically say, okay, so now I'm ready for masterclass. You know, it's a 101, an introduction, an entree into our world that provides you with enough information that the jargon and the terminology and the language that they use is not going to seem intimidating and confusing straight off the bat. So, understanding that, what is Masterclass? Masterclass is basically a streaming video content that's designed to address questions on training, on nutrition, and on enhancement practices, really on the following basis, and that is that people like us, and what I mean by us is people in my tribe, let me explain who that is. Generally, it's guys who are interested in the unashamed use of performance-enhancing drugs. Most of my audience are enhanced. Either they're using drugs in a PED fashion, or in a performance and image enhancing fashion, or in a quality of life fashion. And the thing that the thread that weaves these three groups together is the drugs are the same drugs fundamentally. Testosterone is testosterone, human growth hormone is human growth hormone, glucose disposal agents are glucose disposal agents, and on we go. The big difference very often is the dosages that we use are profoundly different. So I do have, in the spirit of that, an understanding that some people are more interested in longevity and anti-aging, older guys. They're not really into pushing the boundaries anymore, certainly not into the world of competitive bodybuilding or competitive strength sports. And so recently I decided to segregate these two groups, or to silo them off. So I now have two websites, one at muscleandiron.com, which is really more for the serious PED user, someone that's a serious recreational trainer, or someone basically who's a competitive bodybuilder or aspires to do competition. And then a new website, which I'm in the process of, basically creating functionality for. So it is literally brand new, called enhancedforlife.com. Now, based on when you watch this video, there will be more or less content available there, but it is a brand new resource, and in the coming months, it will become more and more developed. Now, for the time being, when you become a member of Masterclass, you get to access both sites. You can just basically go to the site that you deem to be more appropriate for your needs, or you can, hell, you're most welcome to basically, follow along on both sites, but understand that there will be a difference in the content for each of those groups. Not necessarily so much about the compounds that we're using, or the underlying mechanisms of actions and something like nutritional practices, but the way in which we execute that, the protocols that potentially we use, they are different. And the cost to access that is basically $20. Right now, my job is to provide you with enough value and to impress you enough that you want to stick around, right? So you can join Masterclass for $20. That's all it takes, right? And my job is to provide regular upgrades and updates to the content and new materials in such a fashion that you go, that's for me, and I'll be sticking around, and then it becomes basically a monthly subscription. So a lot of people basically say, okay, so what's that about? It's about content that says people like us do things like this. It has to be, by its nature, I'm sure you can appreciate, somewhat generalized. It can't be about you as a genetically unique individual. Okay, that's not practical in a group class type environment. Okay, and so to complement that, I offer one-on-one coaching. And really what one-on-one coaching takes us from is from the people like us do things like this discussion to I need to optimize people like us do things like this for me as a genetically unique individual. And we do that on a one-on-one basis. And I charge $25 a week to do face-to-face, not email support, face-to-face, and that's very rare. Most people that basically provide coaching services, they provide, what they call unlimited email support. I actually set a time aside where we talk face-to-face every week on Skype. And we move from people like us do things like this to people like you need to do this. All right. So it's optimized for you as an individual on the premise of here's the plan. We execute the plan. We observe and track the outcomes, and we make adjustments specifically for your needs. Okay. So I do have people that ask me from time to time, and I'm very transparent. I welcome any question you want to ask. I will answer very transparently and honestly. People have asked me, so what's the difference between you and the 100,000 other people that seem to be offering coaching services today? Because quite bluntly, today we are at what I would call epidemic levels of people offering coaching services, and I don't really have a fundamental problem with that. Sometimes I shake my head a little bit at the very, very low barrier to entry that allows people to get into this domain. It seems that you can do one show today and call yourself a bodybuilding prep coach, but that's another story. What makes me different? Very fair question, and I try to provide enough free content, particularly with the DVD, so people can kind of understand my style and how I deliver materials and what I'm all about. But in essence, for the purpose of this video, I would suggest this, and that is really there are like three different domains, big domains that I think are important in this space, and that is the emerging world of sports science evidence. Now, you have to appreciate that someone like myself that's been around and training for 34 years now, like when I first started, almost everything we knew basically was passed on hand to mouth as what I call bro law. Okay. Now, some of that still stands true today. Absolutely. I remember being told things in my first year of training that I still hold true to. Absolutely. A high protein intake would be an example of that. I was told right from the beginning, you're going to need to ingest more protein than you do as a quote unquote civilian if you want to be successful in this space, and this holds true absolutely today. And the recommendations that were being passed about at that time 34 odd years ago are still true today. That hasn't changed. But a ton of stuff, just a shit ton of stuff has changed. And really the reason it's changed is because we've had like this abundance of very good quality data coming out to either to support or to basically correct these practices. Now, a lot of people don't really fully understand the role of sports science here, and that is really good applied science is doing nothing more than looking at practices that we've been doing as bro law for 20, 30, 40, 50 years and basically saying, okay, scenario A and scenario B, which one's better? I mean, historically, all we had was a couple of guys arguing with each other, premised on, it worked for me. Today, we're able to point to evidence of a much higher quality, looking at a much larger group of individuals and saying, look, statistically, you're probably, as an average guy, better served by practice A or practice B. And that is tremendously valuable in terms of helping us to save time, okay? Because very often what you'll find is a lot of these practices that we've been doing for 50 years, they all kind of work to some degree. It's not like they don't work, period. Otherwise, they would have self-corrected over the last 50 years. If they were still around 20 years ago, the reason they were still around is they must have worked at least to some degree. So what we're talking about is, okay, so if we were to look at two different practices and they both work to some degree, which one works better? And that, to me, is the role of sports science, okay? And then we couple that with personal experience. Now, I'll be honest with you. Most people in this space today either fall into one of those two camps. Guys with a tremendous amount of credentialed capability in the world of the sports science domain. There are people out there literally with PhDs in this space offering education and content, and that's great. And there are people out there with 20, 25, 30 plus years of experience in that space. But very, very rarely do you find someone that has a foot in both camps. And that's really, in my opinion, where my greatest strength lies. I have 34 years of experience, 27 years of competition experience for those that are interested in competition. And I immerse myself in the world of sports science. I literally try to stand with one foot in each of these camps. And the final kind of like a area that I think is profoundly, profoundly important, because nothing is more important in this space than the simple act of adherence, right? Having a strategy, having a plan and executing it over a multi-year time frame is the most important thing here. And I'm a big supporter of individual preferences. So by way of example, there are a dozen or more different dietary models that are popular today, from ketogenic diets to, if it fits your macros, to paleo diets, and I support them all. I certainly have my own individual preferences, but if someone comes to me and they want to do a paleo diet, great, that's fine. It's a valid diet that's the right choice for some people some of the time. And so I not only support my personal experience and my preferences, but I support other people's individual preferences as well. And I have almost every client that I have, right, has a different program to the next person. And the reason behind that is I don't try and take individuals and force them into cookie cutter programs that basically reflect what I do, right? I want to find out what you do, what your lifestyle, what your behaviors, what your individual preferences are today, and we're going to basically optimize and tune those practices without trying to fit you into Victor Black's practices and behaviors, as it were. So, as I said, I try to sit right in the middle of this trilogy here. All right, 34 years of personal experience and immersion in today's sports science evidence. I find this space absolutely fascinating, and I dig deeper and deeper and deeper into this space on a personal level, literally every day of my life. And as I said, I'm a tremendous supporter of individual preferences. If you have a way of doing things, if you have a methodology that you believe is right for you, as long as that methodology, as long as that practice can be supported, in basically in this domain, right? And there are some things that I try to encourage guys to look at and think about, then I'll support that as well. So that's kind of like where I sit. I literally try to live in the middle. And I'm being honest and say, there are a few guys out there like that. I certainly have people, individuals in this industry that I respect tremendously as peers. And I would be more than happy to recommend any of my clients go and work with them. But I can assure you, when you go and look at what they charge, the fact that I charge $25 a week is about a half to a third of what most people that can offer you this provide. Now, how can I do that? How can I be so much cheaper? I don't make any bones about it. I live in a low-cost country. I live in Thailand, right? If I lived in New York City, or if I lived in Hong Kong, or if I lived in Tokyo, I would be not offering my services to you at $25 a week. I can afford to do that because I live in a low-cost country. That is the bottom line here. Okay, so you get to take advantage of where I live in the world. Everybody wins. Okay, so that's it for today's video. As I said, a quick recap, quick summary. Masterclass is not for beginners. If you're a beginner, great. Just jump on the website, order your free copy of the Fundamentals DVD. I'll send that out to you. There's about 8 hours of content there. That should get you to the point whereby when you dig into the masterclass materials, it's not, overwhelming for you. The language, the terminology, the way we approach the discussions, you go, okay, so I've had 8 hours of basically, being introduced to this world. It all now starts to make a little more sense. So not for beginners. Please watch the Fundamentals DVD first, then get into Masterclass. Masterclass is really addressing that question. People like us do things like this. And then if you would like some one-on-one assistance to go from, okay, people like us do things like this to I, as a genetically unique individual, need to make some adjustments to training, need to make some adjustments to nutrition, or need to make some adjustments to enhancement practices to suit me as an individual, then we can basically bump you up then to, as I said, a one-on-one coaching situation where I could sit with you face-to-face and help you with that process at $25 a week. So that's it. Hopefully that answers everybody's questions on what is Masterclass and who's it for and what is the difference between Masterclass and a one-on-one coaching. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you at the next Victor Black Masterclass. Sawadee Ka.